I'm going to say the Seahawks. This is me changing my mind too, but I'm going to say the Seahawks win this game. Welcome to Just the Stats, NFL Top 10s for Thursday. I'm Ernie Jennings, your host, and we are going to cover a couple of topics because yesterday I did a podcast just on the coaches that had been fired or were being hired, and a little bit about the teams that were hiring. Anyway, I don't know what happened. I could not get it to come up where I could edit it and get it sent out. I spent all off and on. I come back to it and it just wasn't working right. So I ended up not sending anything out yesterday. So I want to have 3 podcasts a week, but this week it'll just be 2. So today I'm going to combine the coaches, looking at the coaches with a little bit of a pregame look at the 2 games coming up on Sunday. So that's what we'll do today. So I'll kind of pick up the pace a little bit on the coaches part over what I did yesterday so that we can cover 2 different topics in a reasonable amount of time. So with that little bit of info, let's talk about some of the coaches. And believe it or not, 10 coaches, this is almost a record, 10 coaches out of a job at the end of the season. And that's assuming, by the way, that no coaches in these last 4 teams are fired or let go or quit after their games are left, after they finish the games on Sunday and then the Super Bowl. But barring that, 10 different coaches out of a job, and we'll go through these chronologically. This is basically 1/3 of the NFL are looking for a new head coach. And some of them have found it already, and we'll talk about that. So, top 10 coaches out of a job. The first one was Brian Callahan back in October 13th. After a 1-5 start for the Tennessee Titans, they fired him, and they just said, thank you, we need to go in a different direction. They had Mike McCoy come in as their interim head coach, and they started the search for a new coach, and we'll talk about they found somebody. On November 10th, a month later, Brian Daboll for the New York Giants is fired after a 2-8 start. They let him go. Again, publicly appreciating him coming and serving for them, but they needed to look for somebody else. And their offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, stepped in to be their interim head coach. Since then, they have hired a new coach. And then on January 4th or 5th, Raheem Morris for the Atlanta Falcons, he was fired. The owner, Arthur Blank, said the Falcons needed new leadership, quote unquote. And they had back-to-back 8 and 9 seasons. This was one, these are the first 2, I figured that it was probably worth firing them. Raheem Morris, I'm not as sure about. I know they went 8 and 9 2 years in a row, and they seem to have a good team. Honestly. So is it the coach, or is it the fact that 2 years ago they brought in Kirk Cousins to start and then they benched him, or then the next year they have Penix come in as the new guy and then he gets hurt and Cousins is back? Is that the issue? I don't really know if it's a coaching thing or not, but they fired him and they moved on. They did hire Matt Ryan at the end of the season as president of football. What a position he has now. He's going to oversee all football operations, including the search for a new head coach and a new general manager. So he's got a big key position. Of course, he's a future Hall of Famer, one of the all-time great Atlanta Falcons. So probably a good hire there. On January 5th, now at the end of the season, Kevin Stefanski was fired by the Cleveland Browns. Again, teams usually say this, unless you're the New England Patriots, the Buffalo Bills. But the Browns issued a statement expressing their gratitude to Stefanski for his leadership, but said their results were unsatisfactory. So they are on the look for a new coach. January 5th, Pete Carroll was fired by the Las Vegas Raiders. Honestly, that was a bad hire to start with. I mean, I don't know if anybody could have saw what was coming, but they should have fired him probably earlier than that. And they finished the season at 3-14 under him. So they fire Pete Carroll. They keep the GM, and the GM and the owner both acknowledge their responsibility for the hiring and the bad performance of the team. So kind of interesting that the GM gets to stay. Now, also in this situation, the minority owner, Tom Brady, is going to have a little bit of more hand in the picking of the coaching staff. So that's interesting. On January 5th, also, Jonathan Gannon was fired by the Arizona Cardinals. They went 3-14. And the same thing, the team wanted to go in a different direction. I see that. The GM, again, Monty Ossenfort, he stays. So they didn't do a complete overhaul. You know, Jonathan Gannon, when you lose as many games as they did last year that were close, where you had a chance to win it, or you were winning and somehow you ended up losing, to me, that could be coaching. And we'll find out, because he's got whoever comes in there has a little bit to work with. On January 6th, John Harbaugh, after that playoff game, was fired by the Baltimore Ravens, or after missing the playoffs, actually. Their owner, Steve Bisciotti, he said it was an incredibly difficult decision, but the team finished 8-9. And I think they felt like maybe Harbaugh would no longer be able to be the guy that gets them over the hump and into the playoffs and then deep into the playoffs and back to the Super Bowl ultimately. So they let him go, which was fortunate for the New York Giants. On January 8th, Mike McDaniel for the Miami Dolphins was fired. And the owner, Stephen Ross, said the team was in need of comprehensive change. I do think that this was probably a good fire. The team finished 7-10. They started off horribly. They had a little stretch there where they were winning some good games, beating Buffalo, in fact, handily in part of that stretch. But they still ended up 7-10. Some of the way he was fired, I guess, was a little surprising to some of the players. But they're going to do an overhaul. The GM had already been let go, so they're going to be doing a big overhaul there in their organization. But that team was a mess, and off the field, on the field, just too many things happening. Players saying stuff and doing things that kind of gives you the impression that the coach and the GM did not have a handle on controlling their players and keeping things in order. So that was probably a good fire there. January 13th, number 9, January 13th, Mike Tomlin, after they lose that playoff game, he announces that he would step down. This is the only one on this list that wasn't fired or let go, as you might say. Tomlin just said it was personal and that he was going to step down after 19 seasons with the team. That was probably a good decision on his part. I think he did well with what he was given. I don't know what the Steelers' issue is, but they haven't had a decent quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is a good quarterback, but he's 40-something, 42 or whatever. They have been in need of a quarterback ever since Roethlisberger left. And even when his last few years, Roethlisberger, they could have had somebody in the wings. And they've had people, but without a quarterback and I don't know, I just felt like they haven't pursued as hard as they needed to a new franchise quarterback. So it always puts you in a bind. And then finally, January 19th, Sean McDermott, after their loss to Denver, the Buffalo Bills fired him. The owner, if you listen to the owner talk about this situation, wow. He pretty much blames him for them not being able to win. And it was this kind of an interesting comments that the owner made. But same situation, probably might been just as well. The same situation where you're trying to get this guy to get the team over the hump and he can't do it, where they can move farther into the playoffs and make it to the Super Bowl. So the owner felt like he needed a new coach that could get them to the Super Bowl. So that's what they'll be doing, looking for a new coach. All right. Now, let's look at some of the teams. I did this in reverse order. On the chart that you'll see, I got the teams, the teams that need a head coach that have the best chance to win is what I'm trying to say. And I've got them 1st to 10th, but I'm going to start this from the bottom up. So the top 10 teams that give a coach a chance to win. And starting at number 10, the worst possible chance is the Las Vegas Raiders. They need a lot. I mean, they have a superstar running back, which is great. They need a situation with their quarterback figured out, with Geno Smith and whatever's going to happen there. They got Max Crosby on defense, a great player there. But they need a lot of work. They need another elite edge person to help out Max Crosby. They need some wide receivers, great tight end, but they need some wide receivers, and they need an offensive line above all. Their quarterback's not protected. He was sacked a ton, threw a lot of interceptions. The running back, Gente, was hit in the backfield more than any other running back. Before he even could get to the line of scrimmage, he was being hit more often than any other running back. That offensive line was horrendous. So it just made it difficult all the way around. So that's the number 10 team. Number 9, Arizona Cardinals. Their fastest path to changing the fortunes of this team is to decide on the clarity of their quarterback situation. I personally think Jacoby Brissett will be the guy. I think they're going to move on from Kyler Murray and see what they can do. Now that could change though with a new coach. He may say that Kyler Murray just was not being used properly, and in giving him a better situation to work with, maybe they feel like he would be the guy. I don't know, but I kind of feel like his time is up there. He's had a lot of opportunities and just hasn't been able to make it work. Their running back situation is iffy. Now, they had so many running backs this year due to injury, having to bring up people. So that may be all right. Obviously, they got the great tight end. They got a couple of good wide receivers. So this team has some pieces to work with. Defense is an area that they're going to need to work on. And then the quarterback situation is obviously the most important, but we'll see what they do here. They really do need to get somebody on the defensive line, and then also another offensive line starter. But, this is going to be typical among all these teams just about. You need a pass rusher, you need a quarterback, you need a cornerback that can be a lockdown kind of a guy. That seems to be pretty common. Number 8, Tennessee Titans. Now, they just hired Robert Saleh as their new head coach. He was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers and did a good job there, I guess. He was also the coach for the Jets for a little bit. Obviously didn't do too well there when they let him go, but, I don't know if anybody can really do much with the Jets at this point. It's a tough situation for any coach to come in and try to turn around, as the latest head coach is finding out. And the same, for them, they do have a good quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback. I think Cam Ward's the guy. And what he needs is some wide receivers for start. Somebody to throw the ball to that's a true number 1 wide receiver. So that'd be somebody. Offensive line help. They did improve in the second half of the season, but beginning of the season, Cam Ward, and that could be just that he was a rookie, was being sacked way too often. But by the end of the year, that had really decreased the amount of sacks for him. So they did improve that, but a little more help on the offensive line will help the running game, help the quarterback, and then the wide receivers for sure. That's a key one there. So, like I said, offensive line probably is a big part of that. And then defensive back, they need a little help on the defense. Even though their defense wasn't terrible, they just could use some more pass rushers, as if everybody does, and something that will help them shore up the defense a little bit and have more, allow them to have more turnovers in for their team. Number 7, Pittsburgh Steelers. I almost wanted to put them at number 8 because I do think Cam Ward for Tennessee is their future quarterback. But for Pittsburgh, they don't know who their quarterback is. So that really turns the team upside down. They need a quarterback, a long-term quarterback, not just these temp kind of situations they've been putting themselves in. And they need what I consider a true number 1 wide receiver to go alongside Metcalf. To me, he is not a number 1, at least not a true number 1. I think he could be a 1B if you had a 1A, 1B, but he needs some help. They have decent running backs, a good defense, though the defense is starting to show some age, so that could be a problem. And so this team is a little bit iffy, and I can could see where they might have some issues depending on what happens at the quarterback situation primarily. And then so those are some of the big issues there. Number 6, Atlanta Falcons. They hired Kevin Stefanski, who had just gotten fired by the Browns. They hired him as their head coach. And, maybe it'll work out. I don't know. Cleveland was a mess. And obviously Stefanski wasn't the person bringing in the talent to that team. But their quarterback situation was ridiculous, which is why I can't believe the GM wasn't let go. But in Cleveland, I'm talking about. So now coming to Atlanta, Stefanski has, a quarterback situation. Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix. Is Penix the guy for the future? I think he could be. I really do like him. And as a rookie, he didn't play much 2 years ago, only the last few games. He looked good. Then he got hurt past year. So we'll see what they do there for that. But I do think they could have a decent quarterback. They got incredible running backs. That's for sure. They have a pretty good defense. The Atlanta Falcons, which was a surprise to me, were second in sacks in the NFL last season, behind Denver, who obviously was a runaway leader in quarterback sacks. I was a little surprised by that because you don't really have any top 10 Atlanta Falcons in the top 10 in sacks. You just have a bunch of players who were all kind of getting the same amount of sacks. So pretty decent defense. It's going to be the quarterback situation. They could use another wide receiver to help out Drake London, and I don't know what their tight end situation with Pitts is going to be. They could use a tight end probably. So with that, they could have a pretty good team. The running backs, like I said, you got one of the best running backs in the NFL, and then the backup is good too. Number 5, Cleveland Browns. Well, obviously they need to figure out their quarterback situation, whatever that will be. They do have a good running back in Judkins. They have a tremendous defense, Myles Garrett, for starters. Him alone, is great. So they get a quarterback in there. They need wide receivers, as do a lot of teams, and they need a quarterback. They need to figure out their quarterback situation. Is Sanders really the guy? I personally don't think so. I don't know that anybody on their roster is really the guy. Now, Cleveland Browns in the draft, talk about that in a future podcast, but in the draft, not only do they have their first pick, they picked up the Jaguars' first-round pick when they made that trade last year for the draft when the Jaguars moved up. So Cleveland Browns have 2 first-round picks. Well, you could do a lot with that, and whether they go up there and try to get the quarterback that they need and just clear the slate of these other quarterbacks, bring in a brand new guy that's a legit starting franchise quarterback, go with that, and then pick up some wide receivers, they could be in really good shape to turn around from last year to next year. And in that division, that's a division where you could see that happening. All right, number 4, the Miami Dolphins. They hired Jeff Hafley as their head coach. Here's a team that, again, quarterback situation. I think Tua is out of there. I don't think he's going to be around anymore. Tyreek Hill probably saw his last game in Miami after he got hurt there. That's it for him. I don't think they're bringing him back, most likely, even though he will be a cap hit. So who's the starting quarterback for this team? I don't know. They do have Waddle as a wide receiver. I don't think he's a true number 1, but he's good second, and if they can pick up a wide receiver, they got one of the best running backs in a chain, Devon. He's a great runner and pass catcher, so you got that. Their defense isn't bad. Waller could be, going back to the offense real quick, Waller could be a tight end, even though he's aging, but he performed pretty well. So we'll see what happens there. But help on the offensive line would be good. Beef that up a little bit. And then one more wide receiver, number 1 wide receiver, and obviously, again, the quarterback situation. But they do have a pretty young, pretty decent defensive line. So maybe some help in the secondary would be good. And then a top-tier edge rusher, which everybody wants. Everybody needs one of those every year. And a lockdown quarterback. That's all they need. I'm just kidding. Number 3, Buffalo Bills. Well, this is a team that if you get to be the head coach of this team, you've got some pieces already. You obviously got the quarterback in Josh Allen. You got a running back in Cook. You got a couple of good tight ends in Kincaid and Knox. What you don't have is, and where you need the help, is offensive line and wide receivers. That's what they need a lot. And they need some help on defense. They gave up too many points last year, and they spent too many times having to come back and win games because their defense could not hold the other team off. So defensive help, though they will not have a lot of room in the cap. So it's going to be tough. This is a problem when you have a team. This is a problem for the new coach, is you do have a lot of good players, but they're taking up a lot of money on their cap, and that makes it difficult. So what are you going to do? Hopefully they can find a wide receiver in the draft and then some offensive line. Maybe they can pick up somebody there in free agency. And then they have a good shot. I mean, when you have Josh Allen and James Cook, you got a good shot every year. So maybe a new coach will be the catalyst to turn them around into a Super Bowl winning team. Number 2 is the Baltimore Ravens. Pretty much similar situation to Buffalo Bills. You've got the quarterback already, Lamar Jackson. And you've got a running back. Now, this situation is different in the sense that Derrick Henry is older. So hopefully he's going to play another year. If he plays another year like he did last year, you've got a great running back. I mean, he was number 2. He ended up number 2 in rushing yards last year in the NFL. First game of the season was awesome for him. Then this is probably a good reason. I didn't understand the Ravens in their running game. They were in games, and there'd be games where Derrick Henry touch the ball 10 times, 10 to 12 times. What? Derrick Henry should be getting the ball 15 to 20 times a game. I just didn't get it. And I know he doesn't catch a lot of passes, but still, you have him in there, and he can break a run at any moment. But even in close games, when they're still in the game, they would go away from him. I never did understand that. So hopefully, if he's playing, you can get another year out of him. You got Lamar Jackson. Maybe he does some issues with it, has an issue with his contract where they can maybe restructure his contract to free up some more money so they can pick up some other players. They need another wide receiver. Tight end, I think they're pretty good. They got Andrews, who's aging, but they do have Likely, who seems to be a fairly decent tight end. And Lamar Jackson, he needs to come back healthy. So what do they need? They probably need another left tackle and a reliable wide receiver. I think they need another really good wide receiver. Change the style of their offense, hopefully, somewhat. And then a little more creative in the offense. And then defense, that's where they need a lot of help. Again, this is just like the Buffalo Bills, giving up way too many points and forcing the team to get away from what they like to do, which is to run the ball and control the game. And they'd spend too much time having Lamar trying to bring them back. So defense, a lot of help on the defense. Number one team, this is the New York Giants, and they hired John Harbaugh as their head coach. They didn't waste any time. They got him in the building. They wouldn't let him out until he signed a contract. So I think Harbaugh probably got whatever he was asking. Now, why are they number one and the Buffalo Bills or the Baltimore Ravens aren't? Well, I think it's because I consider I think Jackson Dart is their franchise quarterback. He's a really good quarterback. So they got the quarterback. They have a stud wide receiver. They have a really good in Neighbors when he comes back. They have a good running back, good running backs, actually. They have a much better defense than either the Ravens or the Bills. So I think they got an all-around pretty good team. And it's a younger team. That's one of the key things here. So I think they have a little bit better cap space too to work with, and maybe they can figure something out there and even have more money. And they'll have a decent draft pick as well. So they have a lot of things going for them. They could really see an improvement next year. So that's my number one team. So New York Giants, number one, Baltimore Ravens, 2, and the Buffalo Bills, 3. Those are the top 3 teams, and one of those positions has been filled by the Giants, and we'll see what happens with the Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. A lot of the same coaches or people are being interviewed by both those teams, so we'll see who goes where. All right, let's move on now to the game coming up. The games, 2 games, big games. First one, Patriots and the Broncos. And I'll give you my top 10s here. This is kind of just a meandering type of top 10 here. Number 1, the game is going to be on CBS at 3 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday. And it'll be on, like I said, CBS and Paramount. So kickoff is at 3. Number 2, New England Patriots are the visiting team going to Denver. But the Patriots are favored by 5.5. And you know this is because of this quarterback situation for Denver. Number 3, it doesn't appear that the weather will be much of a factor. I was looking at the weather, and it looks like maybe 40, nothing special. New England's used to that kind of weather. Now, the altitude might be an issue for the Patriots, but I don't think the weather is going to be an issue one way or the other. Now, these next several things are stat-driven statistics. And they're telling me, when you just look at these stats, who has better stats in certain categories. So, for example, at number 4, Drake May has a higher completion percentage under pressure and lower turnover-worthy play rate. meaning that he's less likely to have a turnover and more likely to have a successful play. He led the NFL in passing percentage, completion percentage, whereas Stidham has a history, even though it's not a big sample size, of a higher interception rate. So that could be a problem for Denver. Number 5, Patriots defense is above average in pressure rate without blitzing versus the Broncos offensive line, which is in the bottom third in pressure allowed per dropback. So that could be an issue for Denver again. Now, Stidham, we'll get to him a little bit. Maybe he'll be able to do something similar to Nick's in the way he plays. So what that means, that stat, as far as that pressure rate without blitzing, it means that it's likely that the Patriots have more, they generate more pressure plays that force Stidham to make a mistake. Number 6, fourth quarter win probability. Patriots have obviously now a more stable quarterback. They're better in the red zone, and they have a positive turnover expectation. So this suggests that the Patriots will play better and stronger in the late game situations. Now, looking at number 7, Jarrett Stidham. Maybe he works out. The Broncos re-signed him to a 2-year deal this past season. 2-year deal. They signed a backup quarterback to a 2-year deal. That means they think something good about him. Part of it is then that means he's been in this system. He knows what Sean Payton wants and expects and knows the plays. Just hasn't had the time on the field. He also, as a player, he was a 4th-round pick by the actually New England Patriots, but he has an NFL caliber arm. And he does have the ability to move around. He's play action rollout ability. So he can move, and which will be helpful because I think the Patriots will be after him. So he does have some ability, and like I said, the Broncos kept him around and re-signed him, so they like him. So he could step in and play well. Number 8, and this is on Denver here. So if Stidham can play efficiently and Denver can win the turnover battle, which they're not really favored to do, but if they could move from that touchdown underdog status and make this game close and come out winning the game in the end. Special teams and the field position there at Mile High Stadium are big time. So can Denver use all that to pull this game off? We'll see. So based on those stats, the stat-driven final prediction, this isn't me, but this is what the stats say. The score will be 23-17, Patriots beating the Broncos. I'm going to, initially, both of these games, I could see it going either way. I can see it playing out where the Broncos win or the Patriots win, and the same in the next game. And initially, I said the Broncos are going to win this game because they have a good defense that could produce some turnovers, and it's in Mile High. But the more I thought about it, the more I looked at the Patriots, they just look really good. And when I looked at some of these stats, like for total yards, the Patriots were 3rd this past season. Broncos were 10th. In points scored, the Patriots are outscoring Denver by 5 points a game. Rushing yards, Patriots are 6th, Denver 16th. Passing yards, Patriots are 4th, Denver's 11th. And then on defense, obviously, we know Denver has a good defense. Total yards allowed by Denver, 2nd in the NFL. But the Patriots were 8th, not bad. Points allowed, Denver was 3rd, 18.3. but the Patriots were fourth at 18.8, so only half a point difference, whereas the Patriots were outscoring Denver by over 5 points. Rushing yards allowed, Denver is second, Patriots are sixth. Passing yards allowed, Denver seventh, the Patriots are ninth. So what I'm saying is that the Patriots have a much bigger edge on offense versus the offense of Denver, but it's a much tighter edge for Denver when it comes to defense. So when I was looking at that, I ended up thinking, yeah, Denver has a good defense. The offense for Denver was average, just above average. We'll put it that way. Anywhere from 10th, these numbers were anywhere from 10th to 16th. But now they got a backup quarterback in there. I don't see the Denver offense being better, So, I mean, at best, I think they stay somewhere in the range that they currently are. But the Patriots have one of the best offenses. Led the NFL, second in scoring at 28.8 points a game. With all that, I'm predicting the Patriots to win this. And I do think it actually will be somewhat of a blowout. I'm picking the Patriots 30-17. I think it will be close. But then when the Broncos fall behind and they have to try to make a comeback with Stidham, that's where I think it's going to break down. I would not put this score anywhere near this, and I might even probably have the Broncos maybe winning. But I think Stidham will make the mistakes when he's forced into having to play from behind. If that's how it works out, the Patriots will then take advantage of that, forcing some mistakes and pull out the game in the fourth quarter, making it look like a blowout when it really isn't. All right, that's that game. If you're a Bronco fan, I'm sorry. I have nothing against the Broncos. I'm just looking at trying to base this off of just looking at the numbers and playing it out in my head who I think has a better chance to win. Obviously, the Broncos could win this game, and good for them if they do. But I do think the Patriots they're the 5.5 point favorites, and I think they pull it off. Next game, the Los Angeles Rams versus the Seattle Seahawks. This is another game that I couldn't figure out. It's hard to predict. You can play out scenarios where both teams win this. But number one, the game will be on Fox and kicks off at 6:30 Eastern time. Number two, the Seahawks are the home team and they're favored by 3 points, which is kind of interesting. That means if it was in LA, it'd be a toss-up. Number three, now these are some more of these stat-driven numbers here we're looking at. Number three, early down success rate. The Rams offense is one of the better teams on early down passing. And when they're in rhythm, man, they're hard to stop. Seahawks, on the other hand, their defense is inconsistent on early downs, and especially against motion and play action. So that's a bit iffy. Kind of gives the Rams maybe a little edge there. Explosive play rate. Well, this to me is, again, somewhat close, but the Rams have an above average explosive pass rate, whereas Seahawks, their explosive rates depend heavily on deep shots, which can be inconsistent and usually involving just one player. So the Rams maybe have a little bit of an edge there. Red zone efficiency. The Rams are better in this area at scoring touchdowns when they're in the red zone. They have an above average TD rate versus the Seahawks, who settle for field goals quite a bit, which makes the game closer. So give that edge to the Rams. Third down conversion rate. The Rams are pretty strong here on third down and medium, and versus the Seahawks, who struggle on third down and long, especially when they have to go to the pass. And I'm saying this, but I'm thinking as I look at these last games, and it's really hard to pick this game, and I'll tell you why. But Number 7, turnover expectation. The Rams quarterback does turn the ball over less than the Seahawks quarterback. Stafford's usually better in this category. So, but it's still pretty close. Again, it's almost a toss-up here. So many of these are toss-ups, or Rams may be slightly favored. Run game efficiency. The Rams with Kyren Williams have a good running game. The Seahawks, well, they're without Charbonnet. He's out now. So they just have Kenneth Walker III, who I'm very impressed with watching him run. But there have been games where he somewhat disappears. Now, he won't have that opportunity. He's going to have to play and be the guy. So they can't afford for him to be a bust. He's got to play well. Now, the Rams don't count on Kyren Williams the same way, but he is very efficient. Catch the ball. He runs well. And so I do expect him to be consistent. He's more, I would say, consistent, whereas Walker may be more of a boom or bust. So with that balance, the Rams have, I think that can be to their benefit. Seattle really does need Walker to play well. All right. So looking at that and trying to figure out who to pick in this game was crazy hard, I find it. The stat-driven final prediction for this game is that the Rams win it 27-20. The Rams win the early downs, they win the red zone efficiency, and the Seahawks can't hit on their explosive plays, and the Rams pull this game out. Now, that's a stat-driven thing, but the Seattle Seahawks are 14-3, not for anything. I mean, they beat the Rams. They both won a game. This is the third time these two teams are playing. It's a tough one to pick here. The Rams do have the lead in offensive categories. The Rams finished first in total yards. Seahawks were 8th. The Rams have them by over 40 yards in offense a game. Points scored, the Rams were first, 30.5 points a game. Seahawks were third at 28, so a couple points behind there. Rushing yards, the Rams had the lead here, 7th to 10th for Seattle. And in passing yards, again, the Rams were first in passing yards per game versus Seattle, who were 8th. Now, looking at the defenses, this is different than the previous game I talked about. For the Rams, they're 17th in total yards allowed. The Seahawks are 6th, a decent amount here. We're talking about 42 yards a game difference. Points allowed, the Rams are 10th. The Seahawks are 1st. Big difference there. Rushing yards allowed, Rams are 12th. The Seahawks are 3rd. And then in passing yards allowed, the Rams are 19th. Seattle's 10th. Big difference there too. Excuse me. So who do we say is the team to pick here? If I'm having to pick, honestly, I kind of have to go with Seattle. They've been playing so well, and they've been crushing teams. They beat the Rams the last time they played. I hate to, what makes me hesitant is going against Stafford. I really think of all the players on the field, Stafford is the key here. If he plays well, it could be a long day for Seattle. But on the other hand, Seattle can control the game, and they just are consistent. I don't have much of the same type of faith in Sam Darnold, though he did play well. But their Seattle defense is excellent. They don't give up a lot of points. And their offense is better than average. I mean, they're in the top third. This is where there's a key difference between the Denver team when comparing them with the Patriots. Seattle even though their offense isn't as good as the Rams, it's not as far behind either. But their defense is much better than the Rams. So I'm going to go out and go contrary to what the stat-driven final prediction of the Rams winning this game 27-20. And I'm going to say the Seahawks, this is me changing my mind too, but I'm going to say the Seahawks win this game. I'm going to say they win this game 27-24. Seahawks 27, Rams 24. And again, these games are so close, could be so close that the other team could win, but that's my predictions for that game. All right. Appreciate you listening. Hopefully I get this podcast out here soon, and I will be back on Monday to talk about who won the games. We'll talk about the 2 games and who is going to the Super Bowl. That's exciting. So please like and subscribe. You can find this podcast with the charts on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. You can listen to it on YouTube or Spotify, Apple, whatever app you may use to listen to your podcasts. And like I said, appreciate you listening. Appreciate the subscribers, the new ones and the old ones, obviously, always. And I'll be back on Monday. So enjoy the football. I'm out.